Kia ora koutou katoa. So, I'm David Rhodes. You'll notice up here there's no title against my name, so I just want to clarify who I am. I am standing here as the CEO of the Forest Growers Levy Trust. There's another guy out there, looks remarkably similar to me, CEO of the Forest Owners Association. That is not me. I'm not he today. So, the future. Well, I guess this is my Martin Luther King moment. I have a dream. We'll find out whether that's a dream or a nightmare in about 12 months' time. But just to recap, I was listening to what Jeff had talked about over the last 5 years of the levy, which has gone past in a blur. And I think the industry can be very proud of that we've gone to a different space and some of the things that have been achieved. And quite frankly, a bunch of that stuff just wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had the levy. So I think it's certainly worth reflecting on when we do go into the vote. So as is noted up there, the first renewal referendum, and it is a new vote, a new levy, will take place the first quarter or end of first quarter of of next year. So then we'll be looking to get a levy order through to MPI middle of the year, and the levy actually runs out in 17 November, so it will actually be at the end of next year that we either have or we don't have a replacement levy. So November 18 will be when we celebrate or contemplate a different world. So as was the case last time, as is the case under all primary industry commodity levy votes, of which there are many. We were quite late coming to the party, but 2 votes needed. You need the volume vote and you need the hectarage. You need the volume, and you need the volume by numbers and volume by hectarage. And we need a 50% vote in each one. Now, the Minister also has to be convinced that we made sufficient overtures to get people aware and able to vote. But I would stress that it's 50% of those that vote. It's not 50% of those who could vote, who are eligible to vote. It's 50% of those who decide to get off their chuff and do it. So again, there's a message there. Typically, across all primary sectors, the turnout vote is lower than you get for our national elections. So it's not high. If you're getting 20-25%, you're doing well. So, but small numbers also bring a risk. So, you don't need, it can be swayed a lot more easily. So, again, I'd just reinforce Jeff's message that take the word out and get people to get involved, because from where I sit, and I think I've got a pretty good antenna up, I am picking up that there is a broad groundswell of support for the levy to continue, and that's not just from within our industry, but government certainly are hoping like hell that we continue with this, because they do like dealing with a partner who they can do long-term planning with and fund on a more comprehensive basis. So then we come to what might it look like going forward, and I guess I've just made the point there. I think we've had a transition as we've gone along. We're all prisoners of our history, and I think it was no different with the levy. We had to shape what we put in place with what already existed. But as time's gone on, we've certainly got more efficient, and I think we've recognised that we've had to make some changes, some adjustments as we've gone along to make it more either be perceived to be more involving or actually more involving. And I think that's something that will continue. And as I said, we've made a number of I think, progressive changes, but there's certainly more that can be done. So if we look at some of those things that we could contemplate going forward, one of the first things I think that both the FOA and the FFA have an interest in, and so does the board, is whether we can actually bring the management and governance functions together. So as Jeff said, at the moment we have an arm's length transactional arrangement with FOA, with a separate partnership agreement with FFA to manage the levy program on behalf of what is essentially just a governance entity. Now that works, and I would say at the end of the day, if we make no changes and we continue with what we have, the world will not be broken. It just means that for some of us operating behind the scenes, there's a bit of duplication which it would be nice to try and eliminate. So I think from the outside it works well. There's certainly no issues with where the money's going and how it's being looked after, but I just think there are ways that we can do this which would free up some more time. And so one of those options is to take what we currently describe, and Jeff had a slide previously, there's the Levy Trust Advisory Council and the Levy Trust Board, and amalgamate them so that they carry out the joint functions. Many of those people are the same, and we've got separate meetings at the moment. That would inevitably mean that you would have a larger board. So we would probably be looking at something that is around double the size of what we've got at the moment. That's 3 minutes? Okay. And that then, the main thing with that is not the increase in the size of the board. It's ensuring that whatever you do put in place is reflective of the broad constituency of vote that you've got out there. But it would certainly, I think, there's a recognition at the moment that it would bring some benefits. At the moment, the structure we've got takes more than 30 seconds to explain to people who are even in the industry. So I think it is a little confusing. As I say, it works, but there's better ways, we think. Now, these are not things that are being put in the referendum at the moment, because we do not want to end up with a smorgasbord of options where people are saying, well, I want 2 of those and 1 of those, and I don't like those bits. It could confuse the vote. So what we do have to be clear about, and we're taking legal advice on this and advice from MPI, is that any changes that we make, that the board elects to make subsequently, are consistent with the Act and do not depart from the broad model of representation that you would have. And we're pretty confident we can do that. So as I say, increase in board size. The other thing that has been looked at is whether we need to create a third category. So at the moment, first time around, we looked at, okay, you've got small growers and you've got large forest growers. Now, we're starting to realise that actually that's not bad, but we can, you can go to the nth degree in trying to represent the various types of forest owner groups that are out there. But the feeling at the moment is we do need to create a third category, which is sort of the medium-sized forest owner. Now, with an enlarged board, then that obviously allows you to bring more seats to the table. Of course, what you need to do then is look at the proportional representation that you had and that you're going to. And again, I think we can get to a situation where what we will have will be more accurately representing the voting constituency out there than what we've currently got. And so that is all the justification you need. What I think it will mean is that the large growers and the small growers, their current proportions, the players in the bed would have to shuffle over a bit to make room for someone else coming in. So that's just a proportional thing. But in actual fact, I think because we've got a larger board, we would have greater representation all round. So that's where the thinking's going there. As I say, it has to be consistent with the broad objective of representation, and we've done a fair bit of work looking at the where the forest growers spread is at the moment using NEFD, etc. There's also a view that we can look at. There will be the proposal, and this will be in the referendum, to extend the levy range. So at the moment we've got a 27 to 30 cents. The idea will be that you go lower and higher, so 24 to 33. Just gives the board the ability to be more flexible in how it sets the levy depending on where the volumes are going, etc. Why would you go lower? Well, one of the options that is possible is that you could bring in another way of collecting the levy. So at the moment it's on harvested wood products, but our industry is very unique in having a 30-year cycle before you collect your levy. I mean, you think about every other primary production sector, it's an annual thing. And so what that does is it does create some interesting dynamics between those who are in the industry at the moment and paying levy, and whether they're going to be in the industry in the future, whether they've exited the industry, etc. So it may well be that we look to complement what's at the production end with levy on seedlings, or something at the front end of the cycle as well. So if you had the flexibility on the commodity levy, because that would mean bringing in another levy, but it would allow you to adjust this one. And finally, Jeff talked about all the biosecurity issues that we've been dealing with. I think we are very well placed as an industry. We've just done a deal with MPI on the surveillance scheme, which has meaning that we're cost sharing on that. One of the things that we cannot do at the moment, theoretically, is to use the commodity levy to help with an incursion. Now, we will have a biosecurity levy in place to deal with that, but it is zero rated, and it won't take effect until we actually need it. So the idea behind this is, well, we want to be able to use the commodity levy if we need to allow that transition to the biosecurity levy. And if need be, you can transfer money back again, but it just gives us some extra flexibility. So I've probably created more questions and answers in that lot, but that just shows some of the thinking and the evolution that we're hoping to put in place, and continue to build and continue to improve as we go forward.